which corresponded to our own information has now been removed. In addition, the Soviet government has stated that all nuclear weapons have been withdrawn from Cuba and no offensive weapons will be reintroduced.
How does a president go about making a decision, like Cuba, for example?
The most recent one was hammered out really our policy and decision over a period of 5 or 6 days. During that period, the 15 people, more or less, who were directly consulted frequently changed their view because whatever action we took had so many disadvantages to it. And each action that we took raised the prospect that it might escalate with the Soviet Union into a nuclear war. Finally, however, I think a general consensus developed, and it certainly seemed after all alternatives were examined that the course of action that we finally adopted was the right one. If we had had to act on the Wednesday in the first 24 hours, I don't think probably we would have chosen as prudently as we finally did, a quarantine against the use of offensive weapons. In addition, that had much more power than we first thought it did, because I think the Soviet Union was very reluctant to have us stop ships which carried with them a good deal of their highly secret and sensitive material. One of the reasons I think that the Soviet Union withdrew the IL-28s was because we were carrying on very intensive low-level photography. Now, no one would have guessed, probably, that that would have been such a harassment. Mr. Castro could not permit us to indefinitely continue widespread flights over his island at 200 feet every day. And yet he knew if he shot down one of our planes that then it would bring back a much more serious reprisal on him. So it's very difficult to always make judgments here about what the effect will be of our decisions on other countries. In this case, it seemed to me that we did pick the right one. In Cuba of 1961, we picked the wrong one.
In 1961, the young president was humiliated at the Bay of Pigs, and then scorned at Vienna. It wasn't until 1962, when his nerve was tested in Berlin and prevailed in the missile crisis, that the Cold War settled into coexistence. And we turn to a different kind of contest with the Russians.
Mr. President, don't you agree we should try to get to the moon before the Russians if we can?
If we can get to the moon before the Russians, we should.
I believe that this nation should commit itself to achieving the goal before this decade is out of landing a man on the moon and returning him safely to the earth. No single space project in this period will be more impressive to mankind or more important for the long-range exploration of space, and none will be so difficult or expensive to accomplish. It is increasingly clear that the impact of Colonel Glenn's magnificent achievement yesterday goes far beyond our own time and our own country. The success of this flight, the new knowledge it will give us, and the new steps which can now be undertaken will affect life on this planet for many years to come. It has been said that peace has her victories as well as war, and I think all of us can take pride and satisfaction in this victory of technology and the human spirit.
By when do you think we will be we will be first in space, and in view of Russia's current lunar probe, do you think we'll beat Russia with a man to the moon?
I don't know. We started well behind. Quite obviously, they had a tremendous advantage in big boosters. We're still behind because obviously we haven't gotten our new boosters yet, which we won't get till 64, 5, and 6, so that we just have to wait and see. But I can assure you that it's an uphill race at best because we started behind. I'm sure the Russians are making a major effort.
The conquest of space must and will go ahead. That much we know. That much we can say with confidence and conviction. Frank O'Connor, the Irish writer, tells in one of his books how, as a boy, he and his friends would make their way across the countryside. And when they came to an orchard wall that seemed too high, too doubtful to try, and too difficult to permit their voyage to continue, they took off their hats and tossed them over the wall, and then they had no choice but to follow them. This nation has tossed its cap over the wall of space, and we have no choice but to follow it.
Kennedy never saw Neil Armstrong pick up our cap on the moon, and he never heard the arguments over the wisdom of it. The physical scientists who said it cost too much, that vehicles without men could have done as well or better, and the social scientists who said men on the earth needed the money more. But wise or foolish, Kennedy won. No Russian has yet gone to the moon. It started all over again in 1961. For 3 years, we had let the air rest. Then the test moratorium was broken by Russia, and then by us. And we began measuring the strontium-90 in our milk. President Kennedy wanted it stopped for 2 main reasons: to stop the poisoning of the earth and to limit the number of nuclear nations. He tried to negotiate, but Russia was busy catching up.
The Soviet Union's refusal to negotiate seriously on a nuclear test ban at Geneva is disheartening to all those who have held high hopes of stopping the spread of nuclear weapons and the pace of the arms race. It also raises a serious question about how long we can safely continue, on a voluntary basis, a refusal to undertake tests in this country without any assurance that the Russians are not now testing.
Sir, then that we're going to have another round of testing by both the Soviet Union.
I would think if we don't get an agreement, that's what will happen, and I would think that that would be personally, I would think that would be a great disaster for the interests of all concerned. If you don't get an agreement this year, they almost had one 58 and 59, at least in retrospect it seems it might have been possible. We thought maybe we were moving towards it in December. Now we seem to be moving away from it. If we don't get it now, I would think perhaps the Jenny is out of the bottle and we'll never get him back in again.
Chairman Khrushchev, Prime Minister Macmillan, and I have agreed that high-level discussions will shortly begin in Moscow, looking towards early agreement on a comprehensive test ban treaty. Our hope must be tempered Our hopes must be tempered with the caution of history, but with our hopes go the hopes of all mankind. To make clear our good faith and solemn convictions on this matter, I now declare that the United States does not propose to conduct nuclear tests in the atmosphere so long as other states do not do so.
Good evening, my fellow citizens. I speak to you tonight in a spirit of hope. 18 years ago, the event of nuclear weapons changed the course of the world, as well as the war. Since that time, all mankind has been struggling to escape from the darkening prospect of mass destruction on Earth. Yesterday, a shaft of light cut into the darkness. Negotiations were concluded in Moscow on a treaty to ban all nuclear tests in the atmosphere, in outer space, and underwater. For the first time, an agreement has been reached on bringing the forces of nuclear destruction under international control, a goal first sought in 1946, when Bernard Baruch presented a comprehensive control